This video is designed to supplement the guide that I've sent out for you, and we're going to talk about how to create the different tables and how to get access to your data. So here you'll see that this is my survey. This is something similar to yours. You can click on data analytics or results to get the data that you need. Here would be line by line, and also where you're going to create your crosstabs. So when you click on the data and analytics, you'll click on crosstabs IQ. That's where you're going to be able to create your cross tabulation or your bivariate table. It is where you're going to look for a relationship between two variables. The intention of a bivariate table is to do just that, to see if there's a relationship between two variables, ideally categorical variables, so ordinal or nominal. You can do it with an interval ratio, but I would say use it with at least a categorical variable. And remember that your columns are where your independent variables are going, while your rows are where your dependent variables are going. And you're going to plug them in. And when you do that, you're going to see these percentages here. You're going to look across all of the percentages and see if there's anything that's significantly different across the variables and the variable categories. Within each of the bivariate tables and the percentages, you want to try to remember the 10% rule, which is that if there's a 10% difference, there's likely a strong relationship, but don't limit yourself to just that, because you still can report on the percentage differences across the data. And there's some interesting finds, and it may not be explicit as like the whole point of feeling supported in their goals and gender identity or race, for instance, as I'm using with my example. It could also be a specific group. So one of the things I noticed that there were some differences within like race and multiracial compared to others, and so there was a bigger relationship with those. So like those folks felt more as if they weren't supported in certain instances. So that's where you're going to report on some of those things and differences within your bivariate tables. It doesn't have to be the specific variable, but it could be a category within the variable as well. So you'll highlight some of these patterns and trends and differences across all of that data. Now, you're going to want to think about the dependent variable being the same across all of you. So like consider that, because your research question is going to be right, it's going to be there's going to be like some components around variables. So perhaps you all find the same dependent variable for your independent one, and then you choose a different independent variable. Do remember you do need to have a bivariate table as a group as well. So just consider that. Now to get to the rest of the data, you're going to go to results. There's a couple ways you can do it. One is to click on share result, and then you can choose how you want to do it. It might be through a CSV, and it might be, you can export it this way. This is raw data. It's just like straight raw data. And there you can transfer it directly into Google Docs through your through Qualtrics that way. So you'd connect your Google account and it would go straight into Google Sheets that way. So that way you have it already in Google Sheets. But the other way you can do it is you can also export it through like a PDF, or you can just pull the data. If you look at this is all raw data. So what I'm doing here is I'm cleaning up the data. I'm taking out significant columns that have no importance to me. This will be helpful for some of your variables when you have to calculate specifically like your IQV or your percentage distributions, but it would require you to do some cleaning up of your data. So you'll see here that I'm taking out some of the columns, for instance, and that leaves me with my data here. And what I can do in some cases is also calculate my mean. So I am asking that, so if you need to calculate your mean for your data, this is the best route to go as well. So if you'll see that I have all of the interval ratio or kind of ordinal data that, excuse me, that has all the numeric values. So what I've done was I've copied and pasted this on a different tab. And I've made it smaller. I've cleaned it up a little bit. And then I'm calculating my mean. And in order to calculate mean, you can do that directly in Google Sheets. So if you look at this, all of this are raw data. They're individual responses. In order to calculate your average, you're going to go down and click on the very bottom of that column and press equals. and type in average. If you click in average, it will end up highlighting everything for you, and make sure that it has all those cells, and it'll calculate the mean for you. And that is your mean. So that's something that you're going to write into your table. So that way you are able to calculate that. There's a very similar process for standard deviation, which you'll find in the guide. It's the same exact concept, where you're just going to press equals and plug in the formula, but you'll see that in the guide. And that's how you can calculate that for interval ratio, when it comes to your data, if you need to have your mean calculated for that. So looking at the raw data, right, you can see now that there's different types of variables that exist across all of this. And that's helpful for, being able to work with your data and to run any calculations that you might actually need to calculate. Excuse me. So now you're looking at this table, and for some of you, you might actually see that your data is already calculated for you. And I would say that what I have found is that the majority of cases for people who created the survey have more access to the data. I'm not quite sure why, because you're all equal collaborators, but it is what it is. So if somebody is like the survey creator and they have access to more robust data, then I would suggest that you do that. Okay, so you are going to be expected to create bivariate tables as well as descriptive, like just foundational statistics, and that includes percentage distribution. So one thing you're going to do is you're going to create this table, right? Remember that you're going to go into insert, table, and then select the number of cells that you want. In this case, I have written in everything, and I'm going back and forth just so that way you know that you can go do that. And I'm filling in all the variables. So this table here was like, I just copied and pasted it from a different one. I will show you how to do the tables though a little bit later in the video. And instead, you'll see I have frequency and percentage, right? So I'm keeping track of the count or the frequency of that particular category, and then I'm calculating my percentages. In this case, the percentages are already calculated directly from Qualtrics. And so I'm just typing those in directly into the respective columns and where they go. So that way I have my entire table created. So this is what your table should look like. You'll have the header that says table, whatever number it is. Then you'll have the italicized description of the table, and then the table itself. So in order to calculate this also, what you do is you're taking your frequency and divided by your total or your n. So in this case, 7 divided by 30 is what gave me my first frequency. 8 divided by 30 is what gave me my second frequency. And 15 divided by 30 is what gave me my last frequency. Okay, so now I'm creating another table so that way I can create my percentage distributions for this. And now because it does have mean, median, and mode, you will need to have that. So, similar to what I was saying before, you can create that table for it. You'll also, so you're going to create your table. I'm just showing you how to create a table. Remember to go to insert, go to table, and then you're going to go across all that. In this particular case, just remember that you can't exactly just put it in there. You'll have to go down a couple steps to not have it shoved into the previous table. All right, so creating a table, so that way we have our percentage distribution. So this is one table. You'll notice that there's just a few too many rows. So what I would end up doing is kind of condensing them. I have written in the preparation level my percentage, and I put my frequency. It doesn't matter which order those go in, but the frequency is the total amount that happens. So you'll see that there's ways, if you click on those little arrows, I'm going to show you how to clean up the table. But there's, if you look around, all of these different things are how you can find the different table properties, and how you are going to like mess with your table. So you can highlight it all and go to table properties, and you can change like the color of the border. You can change a wide range of things here. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to 0 point. So you're going to basically go to your table and go to 0 points. Now, if you click on it, like very carefully, you'll see where there's like that blue. If you hold down shift and click on all of the sections, all of the cells underneath, you're going to go back and you're going to see that there's a little set of lines up top. You'll click on those, and then you're going to change it to the point on there. So that section will give you the APA formatting. So don't forget to go to table, and write in the table, change, like, have the italicized description of it, and then I would like Times New Roman, change it to 12 font. So this is obviously missing the percentage still, but your tables should look like these. You are going to have that bar there. This is what your tables should look like for APA formatting. I would have my percentage calculated in there, but you want to make sure that you are labeling everything. Now, your IQV, you are going to calculate your IQV as well. I'm going to show you how to do that in Google Sheets, because it's Google Sheets and then using what's called Desmos. So the Desmos scientific calculator is wonderful. But you do want to have your IQV, which is the index for qualitative variation, and that should be used for your categorical variables. So you're going to find your data. In this case, I'm finding a categorical variable that is nominal specifically, and it was around like goals for high school. So what I did was I created like another little table. I cleaned it up so that way all the responses are empty, or the empty responses are gone. I create another table over here. I have N, which is my how many people responded, so 29. So now I'm creating like another table in Google Sheets real fast, and I'm writing down all of the options that were available, that I had selected on my survey. So all the categories or options that were available there. So I'm typing them in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to count them, so that way they're available. Now, if you go to the other results, that's totally fine too. I'm just showing you how this is one way to do this, right? If you were to go to a different results section and it had like 7 for this response, 8 for that response, that's totally fine to do as well. I'm just showing you some of the different ways that you can work with the data. So in this case, I'm counting how many responses were with each option. So the frequency for each of the options, right? So as you can see, like 9 frequency for all of the above, etc. So I'm going through and I'm doing all of that right now. You need to remember that you also need to have a total row, because totals are always necessary for percentage distributions, because you need something to divide the rest of your data from. So you have your total, and then you are going to have, you're going to calculate your percentages as well once you have everything put in and calculated. In order to have your IQV, you're going to want to refer to the guide. The IQV formula is K times, and in parentheses, 100 squared minus the sum of percentages squared. And then you're going to divide that by 100 squared times K minus 1. So in the guide, I have a picture of the formula, and then I have the steps that you're going to take. Before you even can get to that, you have to have your percentages calculated. So what I'm doing is I'm in the cells, I'm pressing equals, and I'm clicking on the frequency and dividing it by the total. So that way I can get my percentage. You'll notice it gives you a decimal. What I've done is I highlight them again, make sure they're highlighted. I go to format, go to number, and I go to percent. It automatically converts that over. Now, this next column is not something that you need to have, though, for the actual table in the doc. This is what you can do, though, for your calculation. So because you need the sum of your percentages squared, what I'm doing is I'm pressing equals, and I'm typing in the number, and I'm pressing Shift 6 and 2 for squaring. It gives you the caret and it squares it, and that is squaring each of my percentages. It's the sum of percentages squared, so you're going to go equal sum and add them all up. Your percentage squared should not be a decimal point or very small unless your percentage was very small. They should be larger values. So now I go into Desmos and using the formula that you can find in the guide. The number of categories I have in this case are 4. I'm plugging in the values for my formula. That sum of percentages squared part is literally just the total of those. So now I'm putting in that value right there directly into Desmos. So that way I have it. I'm dividing it by 100 squared again times 4 minus 1, because 4, so in this case, K is the number of categories that you have. And that gives me an IQV of 0.69 essentially when I'm rounding. What the IQV represents is diversity. So of all the possible differences that could exist within my sample around goals, my IQV is 0.69, which represents 69% of the differences. So really it's the sample only represents 69% of all the differences across high school graduation goals. That's not very diverse. It's also not, I mean, it's not diverse, but it's not super diverse either. IQV can be used for gender, it can be used for race, it can also be used for any other categorical variable. So you can use IQV for ordinal or nominal. I am expecting IQV at least for nominal, but you could do it for ordinal as well. I would say use your best judgment. You should have something on there, at least one IQV calculated, just so you can kind of interpret the diversity of it. So you'll see that I'm just copying and pasting things directly from Google Sheets into my document now. And I just kind of changed the formatting so it looks a little better and it's more consistent as I'm going through. And this is just easy. You can just do this. You can calculate things directly in Google Sheets as well if you'd like, and just put that in. It's totally up to you. You'll just want to make sure that the formatting is right. You'll see that the formatting was funky, and what I did was I just redid the alignment. And again, I'm changing it to Times New Roman and 12, so that way it's consistent across everything. Again, with this, you do not need the percentages squared for the actual table. That's just for the calculation. I'm not expecting tons of calculations. There's just a few small calculations like IQV that you need to do. Means if it's not already calculated for you in Qualtrics, and then your percentage distributions. Like those are really the only calculations that you have to do. Most of this is a matter of creating the tables and making some minor interpretations of them, because the social statistics has no value if you haven't, interpreted them in relation to the social world. So you'll see that what I just did to create my table. And I got rid of the borders, and then I went and added them back in. So in this case, I have the IQV down below, and I explain what the IQV represents. Very similarly, you may want to consider that for, you will want to have that for your group one, but you'll definitely want to have them for your individual one, and you'll want to have those interpretations because that is a part of your descriptive statistics results. Okay, so you're looking at this doc now, and you can see that the tables all look very similar. They're very uniform, and they're cleaned up. They're in APA format as well, so that is significant. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create another table. So now I'm creating my bivariate table very specifically. My bivariate table is, again, the table that we're creating in order to look at a relationship between two variables. I put on here the crosstabs, and I'm creating the crosstabs so that way I have something to work with. I also exported them and I put them in here so it's easier to see. If you want to follow the one that's in the results section, that's totally fine. But what I would suggest is to pick one or the other. So I have this here, and I have to clean things up a little bit now, because within that, I need to still describe my table, and I need to have the table created, right? So table 5, and then I have the explanation of it. And with that, I'm now going to clean up the table so it looks a little better. So like the totals on the bottom, you'll see that the counts, right? Those are the frequencies within them. And then the percentages. So I'm going to clean it up though a little bit more so it's easier to read across all of the data. So I'm going in now, and I'm going to create the different cells that there are. So I'm counting, and I'm going to insert them, right? Insert table, etc., and go through all of those and put that in. I'm looking at the categories and I'm looking at, the options and the percentages. So I'm just going to start putting them in. One of the things that even I did here was I struggled with being able to align things. So just pay very close attention to the alignment of it. So that way that way you don't have any of those alignments that are messed up. So make sure that you go through and you're able to clean it up with the total down below. You don't need that. You don't need the other total. So you'll see that there's a total column as well. You don't need the total column. It can be helpful, but you don't need the total column. So you're going to put those in there. And I just copy and pasted the names of my, the race categories in there. And then I just copy and pasted all of this in there as well. Like I said, I did have to clean some things up. So just make sure your alignments are there and present, because it can be a struggle to overlap all of that. I didn't need this column, so that's why I ended up deleting it. So we're good with that. And then this is your bivariate table now. You do not necessarily need the individual counts, but you do need the percentages. So the percentages are required though when you're doing this. And what I'm doing now is I'm interpreting it. I'm going to have an interpretation down below, and I'm going to, look at what differences across the percentages. So now in this case, I'm also cleaning my table up. So I'm changing the formatting of it. And then I'm also going to, again, get rid of I was trying to see if there's anything else, and you have to do it this way. That's what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to align it. So you'll see that the cell alignment, I did it at the top. So you just want to make sure it's all uniform. So I got rid of the border again. I did it to 0.0. So now I'm going here and I'm carefully clicking just above each of the rows. So that way I can see them. I click on one and I'm holding down Shift and selecting all of them. So that way it's just easier. It's a one-time thing. I'm going to do all the ones on the bottom as well. So it's easier to do that. And from there, what I'm going to do is go up to those lines and go to 1 point. And that gives me the header row lines that you need for APA formatting. And that is your bivariate table. So underneath, you're going to make your interpretations according to your data. And you're going to make sure that everything's in alignment and your interpretation is important. So going across all of this document, you're going to see like there's a bunch of different tables, and you're going to have your brief interpretations with it. Like the average response is this, the IQV is this. I'm not looking for heavy duty interpretations because that's what you're going to do in your symposium, but there still does need to be interpretations with these. So your raw data is just the exported data from Qualtrics, while this is the part that's going to be in you will need all of these for the methods paper. Now, it's not just enough to just take this and transplant it in there. In the methods explanation, I will have it outlined for you very clearly where to put it in there and how to interpret in the methods section, because in the methodology paper, you are going to have like your results and findings, which is this part, and you will have these in there and you will need those interpretations, but I will have a very detailed explanation as to what you need to have for that. I would suggest that you have like your quantitative and qualitative stuff either separately, or if there's overlapping themes, you can have them together that way. But you do need to have an interpretation across your data, because otherwise these are just tables. And again, the whole point of this is accessibility and interpretation, right? So it's not enough to just have it listed here, but you need to be able to also interpret it to some extent. So, dig deep into those social statistics days that you had to help you interpret and remember how to talk about these things. You will be having to engage in conversation with people at the symposium. So it's not enough to just write the sentences, but to know what it means, right? So you're not just going to be like, oh, well, 23%. That means that 23% of people said, that. And meanwhile, it was split down the middle with sometimes, in my particular case, in this example here. So whatever your values are, will be important. And then in order to delete things, you can just highlight rows, you right click it and go to delete, and that'll help clean up your tables, which will be significant for your methodology paper and formatting purposes when you go through it. And that's basically how you're going to go through this document. I have the guide as well, so I recognize that maybe I talked a little fast, but there was some repetition here. And then you have the guide as well, so hopefully that will help with what you need. Last thoughts are, if you have a variable that does not have it calculated, you will want to calculate the average yourself. But if it doesn't have standard deviation, you don't have to calculate that yourself necessarily. But you will need to calculate your IQV, and you should be able to calculate your average, which I did show you at the beginning how you can do that using that equal average feature. So if you have any other questions, let me know. Just make sure that you are doing your interpretations. You will need to have a final interpretation as well as a group, and for your own bivariate table, which should be included in your methodology paper too.